They called it an accident. That word kept echoing through every conversation, as if they said it enough times, it would start to sound believable. But an accident doesn't follow a man home from work. It doesn't wait for him in a parking garage with the cameras turned off. My name's Maya Chen, and my father, Luis, died 3 weeks ago after falling from the 11th floor of the Renshaw Dynamics parking garage. They said he must have slipped. But my dad was the kind of man who double knotted his boots to take the trash out. He didn't slip. Someone dropped him. At his funeral, they all showed up. Suits, smiles, umbrellas, the company people, the ones from Renshaw. I recognized Cole Renshaw, the CEO. He shook my hand with a politician's warmth, said, "Your father was a pillar here. If there's anything we can do," and I asked, "Why was he even at your building at 10 at night?" His smile didn't even twitch. He said, "We're all asking the same questions." But I knew he wasn't. That night, I went through my father's things. The police had handed me a small plastic bag with his wallet, his keys, and his phone. The screen was cracked, but one voice memo had survived. It was labeled "Daughter." I pressed play. "Maya?" They moved it upstairs. Not the normal room. He said no paper, no minutes. If I don't call Priya, she'll know where they hid. Then static. I replayed it 3 times just to hear his voice again, but each time the same thing. Cut off before the truth. So I called Priya. She worked with him at Renshaw, IT department. She sounded terrified, even saying hello. She whispered, "Meet me tomorrow. Don't text this number again." That night, I barely slept. I just sat there with his notebook spread out on the table, pages filled with neat little lines of his handwriting. He'd written the same phrase over and over again. Hephaestus ventilation, cost variance. He used to tell me, when someone starts using complicated words for simple things, they're hiding something. The next day, I met Priya in the corner of a coffee shop. She looked exhausted, said my father had been called in for a maintenance consult after hours. She begged him not to go. When I asked her if there was a meeting scheduled that night, she said, "Not on the official calendar." Then she looked at me and whispered, "But there was another one." And that's when I realized. There were 2 kinds of meetings at Renshaw, the kind that made it into the books and the kind that got people killed. Priya called me at 11 that night. Her voice was low, shaky, the kind people use when they're afraid someone else might be listening. "Meet me," she said. "3rd floor, break room, come alone." I didn't ask questions. The way she said alone told me enough. The drive felt endless. The city was asleep, and every red light blinked like it was warning me to turn back. When I got there, the building was hollow. Humming lights, empty cubicles, that lemon cleaner smell that never quite covers up stress. The silence was so heavy it had weight. Priya stood under one of those lights, clutching a folder like it was a live grenade. Her eyes darted between me and the door. She didn't smile, just said, "You need to see this." She opened the folder and spread out a stack of printed logs, device IDs, timestamps, columns of meaningless numbers, until I noticed the names. 15 in total: Cole Renshaw, Graham Dell, Harper Voss, and a few I didn't recognize. Then one at the bottom, Standby ConFC. I asked, "What's that?" "It's a drop-in microphone," she said quietly. "It records everything said in a meeting. Internal prototype. Not on the regular servers." For a second I couldn't breathe. A recorder. Proof. A voice that might remember what happened to my father. But Priya wasn't done. She pulled out a beige envelope from her jacket. the kind that makes bad news feel official. It was addressed to HR, to Harper. Inside was a laminated visitor badge. My father's name, LCHEN. Only this one was different. No barcode, no photo. Across the top, a red stamp. No logging, no logs, no record, no trace. Who does that? I whispered. Priya's voice cracked. Someone who doesn't want to remember what they did. The words hung in the air like a bad smell. I left the building and went straight to my department. The shredding bins were still half full. I tore through them with shaking hands, paper dust covering my fingers, the air thick with burnt toner and glue. Most of it was junk, but one corner of paper survived the blades. Project Hephaestus, solvent bypass authorized, and scribbled in the margin one word, temporary. That word burned into me. Temporary means someone's betting nothing goes wrong before the paperwork catches up. Temporary means cheap. A solvent bypass. I'd worked there long enough to know what that meant. You silence the safety sensors. You trick the alarms. You gamble with people's lungs. You save money and kill people quietly. The next morning, I cornered Harper Voss by the coffee station. She was all perfume and practiced sympathy. I showed her the badge. Why was my father issued this? Her smile was soft, rehearsed. Maya, grief makes people see patterns that aren't there. Maybe grief just makes me pay attention, I said. She froze for half a second before walking away, that same pleasant smile nailed to her face. That was when I knew. I didn't just have suspicions anymore. I had a trail, and they were scared I'd follow it. That night, I parked outside the building again, watched the lights go out one floor at a time until the whole place looked like a sleeping animal. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Priya. The recorder might still be up there. Boardroom C, mezzanine ceiling. My heart didn't even speed up. It just steadied. We went back after midnight. The elevator was too loud, so we took the stairs. The air inside was cold, recycled, too clean, like the kind of air they'd sterilize guilt with. The servers hummed somewhere deep below, steady as a heartbeat. Priya led the way. Her flashlight caught the silver edges of ventilation ducts. There, she whispered, pointing to a ceiling tile near the conference door. She climbed the counter, pushed it aside, and reached in. She pulled out a small black device, no bigger than a wallet. Its indicator light was dark, dead. No power, she muttered. She plugged it into her laptop, and a moment later, the light blinked. The screen filled with jagged waves. Then came the sound, Cole's voice first, smooth, practiced. If we postpone again, the board will ask about the variance. A second voice, tense, uneasy. We can't run the pilot with the solvent bypass. Not with people on that floor. Then Cole again. Then why do we own a waiver? And then, my father. His voice. My father's real voice. It's not a bypass. It's a bet that no one lights a match. A thump, shuffling. Someone whispered, "No minutes." Watch your phrasing. Then, laughter. The kind of laughter that makes your stomach twist. I just stood there listening, my hands shaking so hard I thought I'd drop the laptop. They killed him, I whispered. Priya didn't answer. She just stared at me, her face drained of color. Because we both knew. The meeting wasn't over. After hearing that recording, I couldn't go back to sleep. I couldn't go back to anything. The sound of my father's voice carved itself into my head, looping like a broken reel. It's a bet that no one lights a match. He hadn't been poetic. He'd been afraid. It wasn't a metaphor. It was a warning. Priya brewed coffee that tasted like burned hope. We sat in my kitchen, staring at nothing, waiting for courage to feel like certainty. Finally, she said, "We need more than sound." I nodded. "Then we go where the resin dust lives." The prototype floor was off limits after hours, but limits stop mattering when the people who made them start burying the truth. The building was a cathedral of glass and hum, lights buzzing like electric bees. Priya knelt by the badge reader, pulling a thin black cable from her pocket. She worked with the patience of someone who's broken too many rules to count. The lock sighed open and the door swung in slow motion. Inside, the lab looked like a museum for dangerous miracles. Steel tables gleamed beneath harsh fluorescence. Cabinets lined the walls, each labeled in black print: acrylicate solvent, corrosive, flammable. A smell lingered, sharp and chemical, the kind that burns the back of your throat and stays there. Emergency showers hung from the ceiling, cocooned in thick plastic sheets like someone had shrink-wrapped safety itself. I whispered, "They bagged the showers?" Priya's face tightened. "To avoid false positives on the leak sensors, or because optics matter more than air." That line stuck with me. Optics over air. A sentence you could hang a company on. She slid into the chair at a workstation, fingers dancing across the keyboard. Lines of code filled the screen, a living language of secrets. "Offline archive," she murmured. /progy _ hef /logs /archive /offline dot encrypted. Of course. She cracked it with a password so arrogant I almost laughed. Cole, 2020. When the files opened, we found a rhythm of bad decisions, pilot restarts, safety variances ignored, overrides enacted like clockwork, bureaucracy performing slow-motion murder. Then there it was. The entry for the night my father died, 2207, consultant flagged hazard, shutdown vote 3-2, override enacted by owner. I stared at those words until the letters blurred. A vote, I whispered, in a room with no minutes. We killed the screen and walked out without speaking. Down in the garage stairwell, I crouched beside the railing. Faint scuff marks, a plastic shard, the head of a broken zip tie. Above me, the camera dome was crooked, like someone had taken it off and jammed it back on in a hurry. You don't always find smoking guns. Sometimes you find wet matches that never got the chance to light. Back at my apartment, I pulled my dad's dashcam from the evidence bag. The officer who'd given it to me had said, "Nothing usable." Maybe to him. I slid in a spare memory card. The final video was corrupted, but the one before it wasn't. It showed my father's sedan pulling out of the Renshaw lot, headlights slicing through rain. In the rearview mirror, a black SUV trailing close behind. The plate was half blocked, but the sticker in the corner was clear. RENEXEC. Not random, not coincidence. I needed someone who knew how to turn facts into friction. So I called Nadia Park, a journalist who once described a billion-dollar lawsuit as a tantrum with footnotes. She met me at a booth in a half-dead diner, the kind of place where secrets could breathe. She hit record. I told her everything. When I finished, she sat back, eyes sharp. "If we run this thin, they'll bury us in paper," she said. I slid the cloned room audio across the table, the lab logs, the dash cam footage, the fragment of a forged waiver I'd rescued from the shredder. She listened to Cole's voice saying, "Clean it up." She watched the log entries scroll line by line, and she didn't say accident. She said, "We need a live moment, somewhere they can't pull the plug without admitting they're pulling it." I said, "Shareholder Q and A, next Thursday." Live stream. Priya texted, "I can patch in audio at the lectern, 60 seconds before they mute you." I typed back, "I only need 40. That night I dreamed of my father standing under a plastic-wrapped shower, reaching for a pull cord that wasn't there. In the morning, I went to the river. The air smelled like metal and rain. I said, "I know what I'm doing." The water didn't argue. Maybe that's all permission ever is. The sound of no one telling you to stop. The next few days were a blur of quiet alliances. Hector, the former safety lead, showed me old emails titled Optics, Variance, Investor Language. He said, "They made it a performance." They always make it a performance. Priya cloned every file twice and made me memorize a chain of custody line like a prayer. Nadia built a page with a headline box waiting for a name. Detective Soria called at sunset. 3 words, "Be careful, please." I asked, "Will you be there?" She said, "If I have enough to be." When the call ended, I stared at the small wooden crane on my desk. My father carved it from scrap wood when I was 12. I used to think it was a charm. Now it felt like a contract. I wasn't trying to win anymore. I was trying to make it true, in public. And once something is true in public, it starts to be true in court. The night of the shareholder meeting, the lobby smelled like lemon and applause. You could feel the money in the air. Polished marble floors, security in suits pretending not to stare, a string quartet playing corporate optimism in C major. Banners hung from the rafters. Renks 2025. Building tomorrow, as if a slogan could drywall over the bodies buried in the past. Cole looked camera ready, the kind of ready that thinks cameras are on its side. His smile wasn't warmth, it was strategy. Every hair in place, every gesture calibrated. The man didn't sweat. He performed condensation. Backstage, I crouched behind a stack of branded crates, my hands trembling as I taped a tiny transmitter beneath the lectern. The adhesive made a soft click, sealing our plan into motion. Priya's voice whispered in my ear through a headset. "Latency is low. You have 60 seconds before they try to drown you in politeness." Her voice was calm, but I could hear her heartbeat in mine. Nadia texted a single line from the press booth. "I'm live when you are." The moderator started the show, cracking jokes about innovation, community, and the courage to fail forward. People laughed, that empty, obedient laugh you hear at mandatory parties. I stood by the side wall, clutching my phone like it was an anchor. Cole stepped into the lights. The applause hit him like caffeine. "At Renshaw Dynamics," he said, "safety isn't a checkbox. It's our foundation." I felt my jaw lock so tight I could have cracked a walnut. The audacity of it, the calm, the polish, the performance. My father's ghost could have walked through that stage, and Cole still would have smiled for the camera. "Questions," the moderator chirped, scanning the crowd, "from our shareholder family." I was already walking toward that microphone. "My name is Maya Chen," I said. The room shifted, 1,000 chairs remembering how to creak. Cameras turned, lenses blinking awake. "My father, Louis Chen, died after attending your private meeting last Tuesday. You said there were no minutes. I brought some." The moderator froze mid-smile. Cole blinked once, like a program trying to load an unexpected file. I tapped my phone. On the live stream, on every shareholder's tablet, every remote screen, a split window appeared. Cole's live face on one side, a pulsing waveform on the other. Cole's voice filled the hall twice. The present one, smooth as butter. "Ms. Chen, I'm so sorry for your..." And then the recorded one, cold as a blade. "Clean it up." Gasps rippled through the room like falling dominoes. People turned from me to him and back, like watching a tennis match played with a conscience. I steadied my voice. "You ran a pilot with a solvent bypass. You issued no logging badges to keep my father invisible. You cut cameras. You registered a fake auditor. Then you followed him to the garage. Do we call that innovation?" The moderator's voice cracked as she tried to seize control. Let's keep questions." A voice cut through from the seats. "It's relevant to whether I sell." Hector stood up, trembling but unbroken. "I warned them. HR called it a performance issue. I kept the emails. I kept the voicemail from legal telling me to align my language with investor expectations. They forged my signature on the waiver." The air thickened. Murmurs built like static. The sound of fear realizing it had company. Cole smiled the way people smile at fires when they own the insurance. "This is an ambush," he said. "We won't litigate lies in a town hall." "Good," I said. "Let's litigate them in court." The crowd started recording. Phones rose like torches. Security froze, unsure who they were supposed to protect. The live chat on the shareholder stream exploded. A flood of, "What is this? Play it again. Arrest him." Cole tried to speak again, but his microphone crackled, then died. Priya had cut the feed, redirecting the floor audio into the live stream. My father's voice filled the hall once more, haunting and defiant. "It's not a bypass. It's a bet that no one lights a match." Then, the laughter. That same monstrous laughter from the recording. It echoed through the speakers, filling every corner of the room until even the air conditioning seemed to shudder. Sirens were a rumor first, then a fact. Blue lights bled through the glass atrium as the doors opened. Detective Soria stepped into the aisle with 2 officers, her posture steady, her voice even. "Cole Renshaw? We'd like to ask you some questions regarding the death of Louis Chen, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to falsify safety documentation." Cole gave a thin, brittle laugh. "On what basis?" Soria ticked them off like groceries. The recovered room audio, the offline lab logs, altered maintenance tickets, a shell auditor, a forged signature, a witness, and a family that didn't buy accident. Cole's eyes darted to Harper Voss. She stared at the floor, silent. He looked at me, searching for mercy he'd never earned. I didn't look away. He turned back to Soria and did the only smart thing left. He walked. The cameras followed him, each flash like a confession. As he passed me, I whispered, "You called it optics. I call it evidence." He didn't respond. The click of handcuffs did that for him. Cameras fed and fed. Nadia, from the press booth, pressed publish. On screens across the city, a headline appeared that didn't need cleverness because the truth was heavy enough. CEOTIED 2OVERIDEBEFORECONTRACTORSDEATH. I felt the air change, thicker, heavier, honest. It wasn't victory, it was gravity. The room finally had the right amount. Outside, the night roared. Reporters swarmed like rain. Someone shouted my name. Microphones pushed toward my face. One of them asked, "Maya, how do you feel?" I thought about my father's hands, the way they used to smell like sawdust and coffee, the way he'd laugh at his own bad jokes. I thought about the wooden crane on my desk, wings spread like it was still trying to fly. I looked at the cameras and said, like my father's not a rumor anymore. For a moment, the city noise softened, the flashbulbs dimmed, and somewhere in the background, I swear I heard him, just breathing, steady and proud. Sometimes that's all justice sounds like at first. Not applause, just the quiet exhale of truth finally getting its turn. The morning after the live stream, the city felt hungover on truth. Every screen I passed, in coffee shops, subways, office lobbies, replayed Cole's face freezing mid-lie. Headlines competed for outrage. Renshaw CEO detained in safety cover-up. Whistleblower streams sparks corporate inquiry. Family of victim breaks silence. I walked through it like a ghost wearing my own skin. People whispered, glanced, then realized I was the headline and looked away. Fame without celebration is just visibility with edges. Priya met me outside Renshaw Tower. The glass facade was still plastered with banners about building tomorrow, but today the lights were off. She handed me coffee. They've locked every server. Investigators are inside. IT says the board's resigning. Cole, I asked, arraigned this morning, denied bail. She hesitated, then added, Harper's cooperating. We stood there a while just listening to the hum of the city, the sound of a machine pretending nothing's changed. But everything had. That night, I went back to my father's apartment. The key still fit. The air smelled faintly of linseed oil and dust, like the ghost of a workshop. His tools sat in perfect alignment, wrenches by size, screws by type, the ritual of a man who believed in order. I found a half-finished bird carved from pine, its wings rough, its beak still just a sketch of intention. He'd started it the week he died. I turned it over in my hands and thought about all the things he'd fixed that didn't deserve saving. Leaky pipes, broken gadgets, my own stubborn mistakes. And the one thing he couldn't fix, the place that killed him for being honest. My phone buzzed. Nadia. The piece goes up at noon, she said. Front page, full transcript. All the files were mirrored and archived. They can't scrub it. Good, I said. Make sure my name's last. She laughed softly. You sure? You're the story now. No, I said. He is. After the call, I sat at his workbench until dawn. The city woke around me. Sirens, trucks, birds. I realized justice doesn't have a sound. It has weight, and I was learning how to carry it. A week later, I was called to testify. The courtroom smelled like cold paper and consequence. Cole sat across the aisle, no suit, no stage lights, just a man discovering what silence does to him. His lawyers whispered like the guilty always do when they're out of rehearsed lines. Soria nodded at me as I took the stand. Her calm had the gravity of someone who'd seen too many endings. The prosecutor asked for my statement. My voice shook on the first sentence, then found its rhythm, like a song that already knew its melody. I told them about the badge, the waiver, the logs, the recording, my father's words. Cole didn't look at me once, but when the recording played, his hand twitched. Just once. Like the body remembered guilt before the mind did. Afterward, I waited in the hallway with Priya. She was running her thumb over a USB drive like it was prayer beads. "They'll bury him in motions," she said. "Maybe," I said. "But every motion still means digging." Nadia joined us, carrying her laptop. Public inquiries next. The board's testifying. Stocks in free fall. She looked at me for a long second. "You know they'll make a movie about this, right?" I smiled. "Then make sure they get one thing right. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He was trying to keep people safe." That night, I walked down to the river again. The city lights smeared across the water like they were ashamed to shine too bright. I dropped a paper crane, one of his, into the current. It spun once, caught the reflection of the skyline, and drifted away. I whispered, "You did it, Dad." 3 months later, I started working with a safety coalition. Hector ran engineering audits for small firms that couldn't afford to fake compliance. Priya left Renshaw entirely and joined a cyber forensic group that tracked corporate fraud. Nadia's expose won an award she didn't attend. She mailed me the plaque with a note that said, "For making the silence noisy." The case dragged on, as cases do, but the story had already done its damage. The newscasters called it the Renshaw Reckoning. The investors called it a tragedy. I called it balance, returning to the system, molecule by molecule. One night, I found myself scrolling through old voicemails. My father's last one was 34 seconds long. He was laughing about a burnt casserole and said, "Don't stay late at work." Some of us already did our time. I must have played it 20 times before realizing I was smiling. Not the smile of relief, but recognition of how love can live inside anger and still survive it. The next morning, I opened the curtains. The city was the same, cranes building higher, people rushing nowhere. But something inside me had shifted. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was standing in his shadow. I felt like I was walking beside it. I visited his grave that afternoon. Someone had left a newspaper clipping under the flowers. The headline read, "Former CEO sentenced, safety failures linked to fatal cover-up." I traced his name on the stone and said quietly, "They'll remember you now." The wind caught my hair and carried it across my face. It smelled faintly of solvent, or maybe memory. I couldn't tell anymore. As I walked away, I looked back one last time. The crane I'd left weeks ago was still there, its wings warped by rain but somehow still standing. And I realized justice doesn't end when the gavel falls. It lingers, in stories, in headlines, in the way people choose to build what comes next. Because the truth, once spoken aloud, doesn't die. It echoes until the walls that tried to contain it finally crack,